Hello students, my name is Niyati Said and thanks for watching Wikipedia word videos. My topic for the presentation is the first section of the chapter Neural Control and Coordination. In this section of presentation, we'll be studying about the basics of neurons and synapses. So let's proceed towards our topic, that is neural control and coordination. Before proceeding, I would like to tell you what do you mean by neural control and coordination. As you know, the function of organ and organ system in our body must be coordinated to maintain homeostasis. Coordination, students, you can say that it is a process through which two or more organs interact and complement the functions of one another. For example, you can say when we do physical exercises, the energy demand is increased for maintaining increased muscular activity. The supply of oxygen is also increased. The increased supply of oxygen necessitates an increase in the rate of respiration, heartbeat, and increased blood flow via blood vessels. But when physical exercise is stopped, the activities of nerves, lungs, heart, kidney gradually return to their normal conditions. Thus, the function of muscles, lung, heart, blood vessels, kidney and other organs, they are coordinated while performing physical exercises. In our body, neural system and the endocrine system jointly coordinate and integrate all the activities of organs so that they function in a synchronized manner. And what does neural system do? Neural system provides an organized network of point-to-point connections for a quick coordination. In this section of presentation, you will learn about neural system of human and mechanism of neural coordination like transmission of nerve impulse and impulse conduction across synapses. Okay, so now let's proceed towards our topic, that is neural control and coordination. Neurons. Neurons are, you can say that they are the building blocks of neural system of humans. They are specialized cells. They are highly specialized cells which can detect, which can receive, and which can transmit different kinds of stimuli. Okay? You have hundreds of billions of neurons. That is around 20 times more than all the people who live on Earth. You are able to think, feel, act and sense the world around you because you have billions of neurons that talk to each other inside your head. Okay? So neurons, you can say that it is a building block of our neural system that can detect, that can receive and that can transmit different kinds of stimuli. Neural organization is very simple in lower invertebrates. For example, in Hydra, it is composed of networks of neurons. The neural system is better organized in activities in insect, okay, where a brain is present along with the number of ganglions. Ganglion is basically a group of neurons, you can say, okay. But please note that in vertebrates like us, we have more developed neural system whose building block is neuron. Okay. So you can say that neuron is a microscopic structure, okay, that talk to each other inside our head. And we have billions of neurons in our head. Now, neurons come in many different shapes and sizes. Some of the smallest neurons have cell bodies that are 4 micron wide. And some of the biggest neurons have a cell body that are 100 microns wide. Neurons, they are similar to other cells in the body because there are 4 key points that why neurons, they are similar to other cells in the body. Because neurons, they are surrounded by cell membrane. They have particular cell membrane like other cells. And second, neurons have a nucleus that contains genes. That means our neurons also have genes in it, okay, that we inherit from our parents. Neurons, they contain cytoplasm, mitochondria and other cell organelles like other cell bodies. Mitochondria because it is a powerhouse of the cell. Cytoplasm is a fluid of a cell, and Golgi apparatus and all it. Neurons also has these kind of cell organelles like other cell bodies. And that's the reason neurons are similar to other cells in the body. Okay. Fourth is neurons, they carry out basic cellular processes such as protein synthesis and energy production. So these 4 points support that neurons are similar to other cells in the body. Okay. However, neurons, they differ from other cells in the body because neurons have specialized cell parts like dendrites and axons. You can say that a neuron is a microscopic structure and it is highly specialized cell that contains dendrites and axon and cell body. As I have told you that neurons have the power to detect, to receive and to transmit different kinds of stimuli. So dendrites, what they do? Dendrites, they bring electrical signal to the cell body. That means it just receives the electrical signal to the cell body. And what does axon do? Axon take information away from the body. So the statement which I had given you that neurons can detect, receive and transmit different kind of stimuli is supported because of axon and dendrites. Dendrites, what they do? They just receive the electrical signal to the body. Okay. And what does axon do? Axon, they take information away from the cell body. Okay. Neurons, they communicate with each other through an electrochemical process that we'll be seeing in detail. But for the time being, just know that neurons, they communicate with each other through an electrochemical process. Neurons, they contain some specialized structure, for example synapses, and chemicals, for example neurotransmitters. When I say chemicals in respect to neurons, then always understand that I'm talking about neurotransmitters. I'll be explaining you in detail, but for the time being, just know that whenever I use chemical word in respect to neurons, then please understand that I'm talking about the neurotransmitters. Okay. See, the neural system is made up of neurons. These are neurons, okay, which are building blocks of our neural system. Okay. And they are microscopic structure which we cannot see through our naked eyes. Okay. Now, have you ever wondered neurons, they are also known as nerve cells. So when anything pricks you up, ouch. Or when you pull your hand, how do you pull your hand and how does idea clicks your mind? Answer to this question is neurons, because they are also known as nerve cells. Okay. Now we'll study about the neuron transmission. One statement I said about the neurons is that neurons can detect, can receive, and can transmit different kinds of stimuli. So detection of stimuli is done by dendrites. Receive of information is done by your dendrites, and your axon, they just, you can say that it takes information. Okay. And now neural transmission. See, how does the pain you experience when you burn your hand result so quickly in action by your muscles? See, the girl, she pulled her hand because that is very hot. So when you touch something very hot, heat receptors of the sensory neuron, see, sensory neurons, they travel and detect the stimulus and send the information to of the heat to the CNS. Okay. And then motor neurons, they send a response from a CNS, that is central nervous system, to the skeletal muscles, and we immediately pull our hand from that burnt area. Okay. So this way it travels from sensory neurons to the interneuron to the motor neuron, and motor neuron, it sends information to the skeletal muscle, and that's the reason we just pull our hand from that area. Okay. So this is all possible because of your neurons. Now this is the reflex action which the girl had shown, that she immediately pulled her hand from that burn stimuli. So that action is known as reflex action. Okay. So some responses to stimuli, they are automatic and they are rapid, and they are called as reflex action. Okay. That means we immediately pull our hand from very hot or very cold thing, and the response is very automatic and very rapid. So that action is known as reflex action. In a reflex action, 3 types of neuron are involved. And which are those? Sensory, relay, and motor neuron. The one which I had shown you in the previous picture, how the information travels from sensory to the relay to the motor neuron, and from motor neuron to the skeletal muscles. Okay. So in a reflex action, you can say that impulse from a receptor pass along a sensory neuron to the central nervous system. Okay. And central nervous system is comprised of relay neurons and motor neurons. So impulse from the receptor passes to the sensory neuron, sensory to the relay neuron, relay to the motor neuron, and motor neuron to the skeletal muscles, or that is also known as effector, because it is going to effect. Okay. And the receptor, because it has received that stimuli. Okay. At a junction, you can say that synapse is a word that is a space between 2 neurons. That 2 neurons may be sensory neuron, may be relay neuron, may be motor neuron. So at a junction we call it as synapse. Between a sensory neuron and a relay neuron in the CNS, a chemical is released which causes an impulse to be sent along a relay neuron. Okay. And now third steps comes into being. A chemical is then released at the synapse. That means at the junction between the 2 neurons, a chemical is released. And when I say chemical with respect to neuron, then that means neurotransmitters. So neurotransmitters, they are released at the synapse between a relay neuron and the motor neuron in the CNS. Okay? And this causes impulse to be sent along a motor neuron to the organ, which brings about the response. The GIF picture which I had shown you, their effector was skeletal muscle, because the girl immediately pulls her hand from that region. So effector organ is her hand, you can say, which brings about the response. Now fourth step is, effector is either a muscle or gland. It could be skeletal muscle or gland. A muscle responds by contracting, a gland by releasing chemical substances. Okay. Now let's talk about reflex arc. What is reflex arc? See, a stimulus is perceived by the eye. Eye here is receptor. Okay. Then it passes information to the sensory neurons, and then it goes to the CNS, which is known as relay neuron, and from relay neuron to the motor neuron to the effector. Okay, and this produces a response, and that's the reason it is called as effector. See, this is reflex arc. This is our spinal cord. Okay. From here, sensory neuron carries the message to the CNS. Okay, and this is something very hot. So sensory receptors, they are very sensitive to heat, right? So what happens is, from here it causes sensory neuron, but from here, this is the part of the spinal cord. It passes information to the sensory neuron that you have to immediately pull your hand. Okay, but this part of the spinal cord, it is a relay neuron that transfers the message to the motor neuron, and the motor neuron, they carries the message to the effector organ. And effector organ in this case is our muscle, because hand has muscles. So muscle will help pull a human hand. Okay, so it moves the hand away from the heat. So this is how the reflex arc is all about. Now neurons can be classified by the direction that they send information. As I have told you that they are 3 in number: sensory, motor and interneuron. Interneuron is also known as relay neuron. Okay. Sensory neurons, they are also known as afferent neurons, because they send information from sensory receptors. For example, in skin, eyes, nose, tongue and ears, towards the central nervous system. Okay. And now what motor neuron do? Motor neuron is also known as efferent neuron, because it is an effector. Okay, it sends information away from the central nervous system to the muscles or gland that you have to immediately pull your hand from that region. And what does interneuron do? Interneuron is a connecting link between sensory and motor neuron. Okay, interneuron is also known as relay neuron. Okay, and most interneurons, they are located in the central nervous system. Now, type of neurons and its function. See, these are sensory neurons, okay, that carries impulses from the receptor to the central nervous system. That means it carries information towards the central nervous system. And what does motor neuron do? It takes information away from the central nervous system, and it carries impulse to the muscle or gland. So muscle and gland in this case are called as effectors. Okay, and now what does relay neuron do? Relay neuron is a connecting link between sensory neuron and the motor neuron, and it you can say that it connects sensory neurons and motor neurons. Okay. Now, some response to stimuli are automatic and rapid, that we call it as reflex action. I'm just repeating it once again so that picture may be clear to you, all of you. Okay. So in a reflex action, 3 types of neuron are involved: sensory, relay and motor neurons. In a reflex action, I'm again repeating that impulse from the receptor pass along the sensory neuron to the central nervous system, and then at a junction, that junction is a space between the 2 neurons, that we call it as synapse. Therein neurotransmitters are released, which causes an impulse to be sent along a relay neuron. Okay. A chemical is then released at the synapse between a relay neuron and the motor neuron in the CNS, and this causes impulse to be sent along a motor neuron to the organ, which brings about the response. Okay, and the effector is either muscle or gland. And muscles, they respond by contracting. That's the reason we just immediately pull our hand from that reason, and gland, they respond by releasing chemical substances. Okay, now come to the neuron structure. Okay, neuron structure. This is the structure of neuron. This is the nucleus of the neuron. These are the dendrites. These are the small projection. This is the axon. Okay, that carry impulse away from the cell body of the neuron. And these are the dendrites. These are the small projection. These are the dendrites that carry nerve impulse from the adjacent neurons into the cell body. This is the cell body. Okay, and this is myelin sheet. Okay, this is the myelin sheet. Myelin sheet function is that it protects the nerve fiber. This is nerve fiber or neuron. So this myelin sheet, it protects the nerve fiber and it provides insulation to the nerve fiber, and it also increases the rate of transmission of nerve impulse. And myelin is a material formed from protein and lipid that is laid down as a sheet around the axons of the certain neurons. Okay, and nerve, you can say that neuron is a highly specialized cell to transmit electrical nerve impulse, and so carry information from one part of the body to another part of the body. Okay, so the flow of information moves in the following direction: dendrite to the body, body to the axon, this is axon, and from axon to the terminal buttons. These are the terminal buttons. Okay, and terminal buttons to the synapses. Synapse is a distance between 2 neurons, one axon and another dendrite. Okay, now what's the difference between axon and dendrites? Axons, they take information away from the cell body and they have a very smooth surface. They generally, neuron has only one axon per cell, and it has no ribosomes in it, but it can have myelin in it. It could be myelinated or it could be non-myelinated also, and branch further from the cell body. What about dendrites? Dendrites, they bring information to the cell body. Rough surfaces, they have rough surfaces because they have dendritic spines also, and usually many dendrites per cell. That means there are many projections of dendrites per neuron, and they, unlike axon, they have many ribosomes in it, but they are non-myelinated. That means myelin does not provide insulation to the dendrites. Okay, and dendrites, they are the branch near the cell body, whereas axons, branches, these are the branches that are further from the cell body. Now there is one way to classify neuron is by the number of the extensions that extend from the neuron cell body. Okay, this is cell body. Okay, this is cell body and we call it as soma. One way to classify neuron is by the number of extensions that extend from the neuron. Okay, so first is bipolar neuron. Bipolar neuron have two processes that extend from the cell body. As you can see, one process this and one process is this one. So this is our bipolar neuron, which has two processes extending from the cell body. And this bipolar neuron, it is found in retinal cell, olfactory epithelium cell. Okay, where is this neuron found? It is found in retinal cells and olfactory epithelium cells. Now second is pseudounipolar cell. Pseudo means false and uni means one. Actually these cells, they have two axons rather than an axon and dendrite. That means the pseudounipolar, they don't have dendrites in it. That's the reason they are called as pseudounipolar, because pseudo means false and uni means one. Only one projection, that is axon, is found in pseudounipolar cells. Okay. One axon extends centrally towards the spinal cord and the other axon, it extends towards the skin or muscle. See, this is the soma or the cell body of the neuron, and these both are the axons. So one axon it extends towards spinal cord. That means this axon is towards the spinal cord and this axon is towards the skin or muscle. Okay. And this type of pseudounipolar nerve cells are found in dorsal root ganglion cells. Third is your multipolar neuron. Multipolar neurons, they have many processes that extend from the cell body. However, each neuron has only one axon in it. Okay. See, this is multipolar. It has many processes that extend from the cell body. See, these are the projections that extend from the cell body. That's the reason its name is multipolar neuron. And such kind of neuron is found in spinal motor neurons and pyramidal neurons and Purkinje cells. Now, what is inside of a neuron? What all is found inside neurons? Neuron has many of the same organelles such as mitochondria, cytoplasm, nucleus and other cell organelles. Okay. First, neurons have nucleus in it. Nucleus is a boss of a cell body. So it contains genetic material including information for cell development and synthesis of protein which is necessary for cell maintenance and survival. And nucleus is covered by membrane and that membrane is known as nuclear membrane. Now comes nucleolus. Nucleolus, it produces ribosomes which are also known as protein factories. They are necessary for translation of genetic information into protein. That's the reason ribosome, what does they do? They just convert mRNA into proteins and that process is known as translation. So nerve cells also have nucleolus which can produce ribosomes and that ultimately produces proteins. Then comes Nissl bodies. Nissl body is a group of ribosome which is used for protein synthesis. Nerve cells also have endoplasmic reticulum, that is ER. Endoplasmic reticulum is a system of tubes, or you can say that it has a channel like thing that transport material within the cytoplasm. Okay. Nerve cells also have Golgi apparatus which is important in packaging of protein into the vesicles. Okay. And then your neurons have microfilaments that forms the framework of the cell that transport material within a neuron and may be used for structural support. And then your neurons also have mitochondria, which produces energy for the fuel cellular activities. Now come to synapses. Synapses are the junctions formed with other nerve cells. That means it is a distance between two neurons. Axon of the one neuron and dendrite of the one neuron. Space between these two is known as synapse. Okay. It is at these junctions that neurons are excited, inhibited, and modulated. And there are two types of synapses, electrical and chemical. First, we'll talk about the electrical synapses that occur where presynaptic terminal is in electrical continuity with the postsynaptic. What do you mean by presynaptic and postsynaptic? Presynaptic neuron means first neuron, whose axon is connected with the second neuron's dendrite. Okay. So electrical synapses, they occur when presynaptic terminal is in electrical continuity with the postsynaptic. Okay. Ions and small molecules, they pass through just connecting channels from one cell to the next, so that electrical changes in one cell are transmitted almost instantaneously to the next. Okay. Now let's see a process. This is a chemical synapse. Distance between this is the presynaptic terminal and this is the postsynaptic terminal. So a chemical synapse communicates a signal from first neuron, which is known as presynaptic, to the second neuron, which is known as postsynaptic. These are the neurotransmitters which are filled in the vesicles, and these are the docking proteins. They come in contact with it. Action potential is generated. See, this is how it works. This is the presynaptic cell and this is the postsynaptic cell. Okay, neurotransmitters are filled in the vesicles, and then what they do, they just come to the docking proteins. Action potential is generated and some vesicles dock by the specific docking protein, and neurotransmitter is filled here in the synaptic cleft, and which is taken up by the postsynaptic docking proteins, you can say. Okay, and then electrical impulse, which is known as action potential, is generated, and this is how it forms a clathrin dotted pits, and then this process continues. Okay, see, this is how the information is gets received and gets transmitted from presynaptic to the postsynaptic. So the empty vesicles, they are recycled by endocytosis because it was taken up by the presynaptic of the clathrin coated pits. These are the clathrin coated pits, and then it takes up more neurotransmitter to start the cycle again. See, more neurotransmitter it is containing, so that it can start the cycle once again. So this was all about neurons and the synapse. So till then, stay tuned and keep watching Edupedia Word videos.